If you could see the shapes that Yvette Shapiro was pulling in studio now, I don't know if you'd be happy or sad or how you'd feel, but I was enjoying it, Yvette Shapiro. How are you?
I'm very well, and you?
I'm not too bad. It's been a weird kind of day. You know, you get up really early and then before you know it, it's what, 10 past 10 at night, and you think, where did that entire day go?
Yeah, charged past in a blur.
Exactly. Speaking of a blur, Chris Love is here as well. Hello, Christopher.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm alright. You feeling good?
I'm feeling very good after that Janet song, love it.
Yeah, you see, the music tonight, as always, there's a theme, and this evening it is a year. So do you want to have a go? All the songs are from the same year. Now, I know we've only had one so far, but have a guess, and then we'll see how bad you are at this at the end of the programme. Yvette? Just take a wild stab.
97?
1997?
It's pretty wildly out. People are cackling at
Yes, it is, Chris Love.
Oh, should I go higher or lower?
I'm not going to help you with this.
I'm going to go 95.
1995. Okay, it's interesting. 81771 on the text if you want to have a go yourself. We might have a row about this later on. And that actually fits in with our first topic. We're going to talk about family feuds and fallouts, where people go from the best of friends maybe to the worst of enemies, and sometimes in a very short period of time. Now, this can be siblings who haven't spoken to each other for decades, to quarrels with neighbours, work colleagues, partners, maybe your partner's families and their friends. Whether it's happened to you personally or maybe in wider circles, friction with others can tear friends and families apart. So the question tonight is, how do you deal with that? Do you have a method that you think is sort of tried and tested for you? It works? Or maybe you think you just have to write it out, or maybe try and ignore it. Yvette, what do you think? These, and I'm not sure if you want to get personal, any personal stories, or we can talk in generalities. But I think it's something that affects a lot of us at some point.
I don't think there are any families who aren't affected at some point by, tensions at best and full-blown blood feuds at worst. And it does come back to the old saying of you can choose your friends and you can't choose your families.
Yeah.
But I think, most families have an element of dysfunction in them. And I think people need to be actually honest about that. And I think there would be a big relief for other people if people said, instead of living this Facebook life of, oh, look at our happy family, all in our matching Christmas jumpers, and it was all wonderful, and these kind of extended family groups who go around together, our ones and your ones and their ones, and all living in each other's pockets, and we're all so shiny faced and
but
happy.
you make it sound very simple. Surely though, Chris, sometimes you just don't like people. You look like someone that would hold a grudge with no problem at all.
You see, I love to bear a grudge, and I love to have an argument as well. Now, I'm not a very feisty person, but I'm razor sharp with my tongue. And even if I'm wrong, I will just go the whole hog, and we'll just argue until you agree that I'm right.
But that's brilliant that you do that. And
Stand by your guns.
All these people who put on this face of we're really happy and we never argue. This is great that you actually just take people on, whether they're in your family or not, and call them out if you think they're wrong, and have the row, because that's far more honest, and it kind of lets the blood, doesn't it? Out it comes, all those things that you need to say. Better out than in.
But sometimes people find it difficult to do that, or when they do, they can't move on, and then it festers for years. Like, I know of feuds, and I'm not saying it's within my family, but that have literally gone on for years. And then the really sad thing that happens is then you have maybe more babies come along, family members come along, or family members pass away, and because of that barrier in the way, you miss out on that. People miss out on those really momentous points in your life because they're stubborn, like Chris.
Yeah, that's true, but I do think it comes back again to honesty, and you're forced into a relationship with these people in your family simply because you are related to them.
Right.
And sometimes I think people actually now are more willing to cut ties. And if you look at the sort of, for a lot of people, they would say their friends are their family. The people they've chosen to have in their lives are probably more valuable to them, more nurturing to them, more supportive towards them, give them more than sometimes their own family members. And I think people increasingly are, as families are breaking down, are forging new alliances with their chosen people who are their friends.
Do you think, Chris, is it sometimes better to bite your tongue and to say nothing on some occasions to keep the peace? Or do you think, is that being untrue to yourself?
Yeah, it's untrue to yourself, and I think it's almost worse because, you know, if that person has said something to you and it's really, you know, eating you up inside, you know, you're only causing yourself that kind of harm and distress, and you'll probably go home at night and delete that person from Facebook. It's the silent kind of people that
Are you a huffer?
they walk away from a conversation, and then before you know it, you're unfriended on social media. You know, that's the ones that you need to really worry about.
You're a huffer. That's how you do it. That's how you operate things. And like the way I've been taught and been brought up is to try and be upfront. So if there's an issue, then try and address it in a civil manner. But things like that, they sound great on paper, but they don't always work. And sometimes, you know, there can be friction because, let's talk about maybe like in-laws, for example, you know, or the controlling element of some people in your life that's there through no real act of your own. And they see themselves as doing good, and you might see them as doing the opposite.
Yeah, and then that can turn into something bigger. You become even sort of more paranoid about it. So, you know, if we can get to a place where you're able to nip that in the bud early and set boundaries, and I think this is the problem, is that especially maybe with in-laws, people don't want to be seen at the start to be standoffish or to be trying to set rules around how they want that relationship. So, you know, if they have a particularly overbearing mother-in-law or overbearing father-in-law, they tend to, and I've seen this with someone who's a friend who really just
will remain nameless,
but, you know, wanted to fit in, didn't want to be seen as an awkward and difficult person. So she kind of acceded to really what were really quite impossible demands of the parents-in-law to behave in a certain way. And eventually, of course, it all came to a head and ripped apart and caused, you know, a rift and a feud that didn't really need to be there. But I think it was her desperate need to be accepted by that side of the family.
But sometimes you hear this is such an overused phrase, but be the bigger person, Chris. So, you know, be that person that says, look, do you know what? That person is really annoying me, and I think they're wrong, but to almost just accept it in myself, move on, I will just be the bigger person.
But life is very short at the same time.
It's too short to have rows, that's my point.
And too short not to say what you think, and too short to live with tension.
Yes, and too short to have those people in your life who you necessarily don't want in your life. So if it's easier just to unfriend them on social media and walk away, then...
But you say unfriend on social media, though, that what if they are like someone that you can't just get rid of online? You see them maybe all the time.
It's very easy.
But what I mean is, he is ruthless. But if you see them face to face, if you see them in person, and you can't help that, they're part of the family or a family member's partner or a friend's partner, you know, it's not that easy, and your rift with them could then spread and cause... Why am I being the reasoned one here? I'm amazed at this.
But I think if it's a friend's partner or if it's a family, you know, somebody in your family, you just avoid situations where they're going to be. If it happens to be a friend's partner, then you just invite that friend out for a coffee or a drink or dinner. And, you know, sometimes you just got to be blunt and say, you know, I don't really like her.
And then what about the people that you affect that around them? So that person X you've fallen out with, fair enough, but you've also then affected Y, Z, W, B, G, and F.
But isn't honesty sometimes the best policy?
No.
So at least you know where you stand, and they know where you stand. So
I think every family needs a peacemaker as well, and that, you know, that might be, you know, someone who's on the edge, maybe an aunt or a cousin who is good at bringing people together and good at speaking truth when it needs to be spoken, and actually can act as a sort of conciliatory force within a family to try. And if you have someone like that, so, you know, every family does seem to have someone who is the glue that seems to hold the family together. And in my case, my great aunt Maisie, who passed away a few years ago, she was the one whose tentacles reached out to everybody. She brought everybody together, and when she died, actually you saw not so much divisions as drifting,
yeah,
because there wasn't anybody at the centre anymore pulling people together from that and I think families really do suffer if they don't have a glue type person in the middle.
What about the person then when you decide to try and heal a rift? You know, the hero of a relationship, Chris, and that person that has to make the first move? I don't even know why I'm asking him, because I know rightly that would never be him. You're the type of person that would go to your grave holding that grudge and still feel right. His last breath would be, I was right.
But it takes somebody to apologise, you know, and it, as you say, Yvette, you know, it takes somebody to step up to the mark and actually say that they're sorry. And, you know, it's got to be one person. It may not be me, but and they may realise that it won't be me, so they'll be the bigger person. And, you know, if I choose to accept, then very well, we'll carry on as we did before.
And I think we need to accept that, you know, most families do have these tensions and rifts within them, and not pretend that we don't. That's what irritates me so much, people who put on this front of, oh, we're just the most happy and functional family and we never feud. My sisters and I were also happy.
I don't
you know
think
that's
that.
not true.
I see the opposite. I see the backbiting. Not that I'm saying in my family, need to be really careful here, but when my experience with this, I see people being quite direct, and it doesn't always really have a positive outcome. Yes, you got it off your chest, but sometimes it just compounds the issue. What about, for example, funerals, weddings, holidays with the people that you've fallen out with?
Never holiday with your family. Never do that.
And you mean beyond your immediate?
Beyond your, in fact, sometimes not even your immediate family. But no, I think that is a recipe for tension. And if you look at Christmas and how tense Christmas Day,
I love
Boxing
Christmas
Day can be when you're thrown together with people that, you know, you're forced to see once a year because, you know, great aunt so and so always visits and we have to have her even though no one can stand her, that type of thing. So can you imagine 2 weeks of that and throw in sun and drink and fractious children and grumpy teenagers and somebody's grumpy dad who's got sunburnt and doesn't. Can you, the tension that you have imported, you know, into your life for a fortnight in the sun or whatever is just not worth it.
I am sorry, right, but the negativity from the both of you is making me feel a little bit sad.
This is reality.
You've said holidays. What about the likes of weddings and funerals, family get-togethers where you're not necessarily inviting someone, but you might be in the same room? How do you deal with that?
But imagine if you went to a funeral and you were feuding with the person that has passed away, you know, you'd be laughing in the back row. Would you go? No, I wouldn't go. I'm only joking.
Sorry, did you just say you would be laughing in the back row?
I'm only joking. I'm thinking of like Death Becomes Her, you know, that movie,
I don't
where
know.
they're all at the back row, you know, laughing away.
Lawrence
I've got a very weird sense of humour.
Barry. Lawrence on Facebook says, just tell them what you think and tell them the truth, and if they stop talking to you, then carry on with your life without them. And I get what he's saying there, but I can guarantee if that's about a particular person there, Lawrence, that the other person is saying the exact same thing. We all quite often think we're right, and even if we know we're wrong, we can convince ourselves that we're right, and then you've got this circle where we just keep going round and round of it.
Well, that's life. That's
I
human
would
nature.
never want to cross either of you because I'd be cut out quicker than I could look at you.
Very wise.
Yeah.
Very wise.
What about those relatives and partners, friends, you know, who are actually quite friendly and inoffensive? You know, are you happy then to cut them out, to kind of set them free? You know, you can't really stand by them if you're falling out with their partner.
Well, I've never been in that situation where I've fallen out with like my best friend's partner, you know. Like I'll always try to get along with people that I'm close to, but you know, there are just some people that for all the love and money in the world, they're just not a likable person, not a likable character.
I bet they say the same about you.
And the people that are connected to them, it's just collateral damage, you know, and they'll understand that. They have, you know, if you're cutting out the person that you're feuding with, then everybody connected to them has to go, and that's just it. I sound like a mafia boss.
You do. That's it. You'll be sleeping with the fishes tonight.
But you mentioned weddings, and that's another, because weddings themselves are very stressful events, and then you're thrown into a room, and of course, you know, you've got to sit there listening to saccharine sweet speeches and exchanges of vows, and you're glaring across the aisle at, you know, somebody on the other side from some branch of the family that you don't like, and of course there's always that falling out when, you know, when someone who's invited wants to bring, you know, I want to bring my new partner or whatever, and everyone's going, oh no, you know, you can't import that person in on us. So they are a recipe for real
What
tension.
about
So weddings are to be avoided at all costs.
So you're avoiding holidays, weddings, and funerals so far. So Vet's just going to lock herself in the house.
Yeah.
What about when it's kind of because of embarrassment? Now this does happen. Say, for example, that the fallout has happened because of a wedding and people have had a bit too much to drink. And then you're in that stage of life, and in my head it's when you're 35 and over, I include myself just about in that, and you find it harder to say sorry because you feel like, you're that old and twisted, there's no point.
Just admit it never happened. Just convince yourself to carry
That
on.
doesn't help to fix it. If you got drunk, I'm not pointing at either of you, but if you got drunk and something's happened, that you don't even drink, so we'll
No, I
talk to you
don't
about
drink.
this.
So yes, how very dare you?
Yeah, we'll talk to you about this. But if you get my
Defame me.
point,
Has this happened in the past?
the way I look at it, right? Do you want to reply to that?
No, whiter than white.
Okay, I'm not sure if that's completely true, but anyway, of course it is. The way I look at it is if alcohol has been involved, it can quite often mean that people are embarrassed by their own behaviour. And because they're embarrassed by themselves, there's nothing they can really do about that. They lash out then. And then, as a result, they maybe stop talking to people. They can't admit they were wrong, go and apologise and bring it up. And therefore, they let it all fester, knowing they were at fault. And they can almost create these scenarios in their head about what really didn't happen. But they're convincing themselves and other people it did.
And that's where you need somebody sensible, somebody, the conciliatory force, the sensible,
Well, it's not going to be you because you won't be there.
To go and do that. Somebody needs to do the reach out and say, do you know what?
Reach out.
Your behaviour wasn't that bad. We all get drunk, we all make fools of ourselves at weddings, whatever. Come on back into the fold, because sometimes people get, they're lonely, they're left out there and they're lonely, and someone needs to reach out to them.
Okay.
That's not me, but
There's nothing worse than someone phoning you the day after the night before to tell you what you've done. You just want to hang up.
Yourself and myself have been there before, Chris.
Oh, we have.
I've known you long enough. Ashleen on Facebook says, if they fall out, then let them tear on. Fair enough. We are streaming some of tonight's show on the BBC Radio Ulster Facebook. If you want to go and watch some of it, Chris forgot about that earlier when he was picking his nose. Hopefully you got that on camera. Coming up tonight, we'll be hearing about the It's What I Wish I'd Known When I Was 25, our mini-series. And tonight it is the chart-topping classical soprano singer. That's quite a mouthful, I do think. And her name is Margaret Keys.
I took a job called Music in Hospitals, and it was run by Magnus Magnuson that did Mastermind. So it was throughout Scotland. So I used to travel maybe 3 times a week to different hospitals, hospices, and just literally sing for all patients. But the grounding that did for me, because it almost helped me to I had an audience that weren't judgmental.
So we'll have that in a few minutes' time. You can also guess the year for tonight's music. The text, if you want to get in touch, is 81771. And of course, you'll be charged at your standard rate. Before all that, though, it's not quite your birthday today, Chris, but I believe you've no headphones on, so you can't even hear this music.
I can't hear anything.
Stevie Wonder is playing. This is really wasted now.
it's nearly my
Put
birthday.
your headphones on.
Hey, it's nearly my birthday. 2 weeks' time, it's my birthday.
Chris, what age are you tomorrow?
I'll be,
Don't
I'm so old I can't even remember.
Yes, don't let him bully into saying.
I bet.
I'm not saying. Actually, no, I'll be 53.
You shouldn't actually have to answer that. But
No,
anyway,
but I will. I'll be 53. No point
Wow.
in hiding.
this is the 3rd time round, but happy birthday to you, Yvette.
Thank you.
And happy birthday to you, Chris.
She's stealing my thunder.
Is your birthday tomorrow?
Yes.
Oh.
That's why we're playing the music that neither of you can
You're
hear.
Libra?
I'm a Virgo.
A Virgo. You're on the cusp.
I'm on the cusp.
Yeah.
Perfectionist.
Right, okay. I'll just turn their mics off now. 81771 on the text if you want to get in touch. I played that music for him and he didn't even hear it because he had no headphones on. Absolutely dreadful.